Hello, it's me, Younga, and I'm here to talk about two games I really like: Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk, and the sequel, Milk Outside a Bag of Milk Outside a Bag of Milk. This game covers very heavy topics as depression, suicide, and mental illness. This will be a video full of spoilers for the game, so if you haven't played the game and you want to play it, don't watch this video yet. This video will just cover things about her mental health and how she acts and why she acts like this and what things cost her to have these problems. Some things will be unanswered, like why she sees red and only red, because that's not really explained in the game. But it will delve in a bit into her family life and a bit into her mental health. The first game serves as world building and establishes the main character. I like the title as Milk Girl. In the first game, she's just walking down the road, rehearsing a line that she can say at the store. So when she buys the milk, she won't forget. And then you pop in. After you type in your name and all that stuff, the game starts. But then you pop in, and then you ask her, why are you reciting that? And she tells you, oh, I'm reciting this so I don't forget what to say when I'm buying milk. After a bit of walking, you and her get to the store, and then she gets her first interaction with the person. And that person is a weird-looking creature thing in her eyes that only says the letter O. And an exchange goes by where it's just her saying, "Excuse me, what?" and the creature saying, "Oh." It goes on for a while. And then you ask her, why are you responding to this person if you're only going to get the same answer? And then she says, oh, I'm just trying to figure out what they're trying to say, even though they know that I'm scared of the letter O. And you ask her, why are you scared of the letter O? And she says, oh, it looks something like this. But a little warning, I'm going to give you a heads up because it looks pretty disgusting. And then it just shows a weird black void. And it's very uncomfortable to look at with a very uncomfortable sound. And then when she's in the store, after she talks to that person and they go away, after she says the right thing, she goes to the milk. And with the milk, she's like, oh, it's a bag of milk. I'm putting the milk into my bag. Now it's milk inside a bag. So now, after that exchange, she's like told by the voice, which is you, the player, to go to the cashier and pay for the milk. And when she gets to the cashier, she gives the cashier the milk. After the cashier says, give now, in a very menacing tone, while looking very unhumanly. And then she asks for the milk back. And the cashier says, no. But then she says, I need the milk back, or else mom's going to throw me out a window. And the cashier says, no. And there's a prompt for you to say 3 things. 2 mean things and 1 nice thing. And the nice thing is, give the cashier the money. And then when she hears that from you, she's like, oh, that's a good idea. I'm so glad I have you here. And here, the next part is just her walking home. While she's walking home, she talks about how she feels like a mile of ice cream. I'm just going to put up how she explains it, because I don't know how she explains it from heart. So, yeah. But after she finishes talking about how she feels like a mile of ice cream, she tries to focus on walking. And then she focuses so hard to the point where she closes her eyes so she can focus on it. And then you, the player in her head, tells her to watch out. And then she dodges to like the left. And then she looks at what almost hit her. And she said, "Oh, that bear almost hit me." And the player says, that was a truck with red brake lights. It's like, "Oh, and it looks like a bear with red eyes." I was like, "No, it's a truck." And she replies with, "Well, who would try to run down an innocent girl like me?" And you could either say nothing, I think, not sure, or reply with, "The world is cruel and sick." And either option gives you the next dialogue box, which is like, "Well, they shouldn't. I'm such a cute girl. They shouldn't try to run me over." And so, after that, get to a crosswalk, to a crosswalk. And while you're sitting there are two options. You could either stay quiet, or you could tell her that, "Does any of this seem real to you?" And tell her that this might all be in her head. And if you tell her that, you get the bad ending, where she says, "Your name," because you type your name at the beginning of the game, "your name isn't really helping me out. I guess I should try something different." But if you stay silent, she'll say, "Maybe I should go to a bench and sit down and talk to you a bit." So she goes to a bench and she says, "Oh, this is a good bench, like in those visual novels where a character gives their monologue." And she walks over to the bench and she sits down. And this is where she starts to get serious. And she says, "Wow, all this seems silly, I'm pretty sure, from your perspective. But this is how I usually get through my day. And I'm very thankful for you helping me. Even though if it seems weird, I know you'll understand." And then she says, "Could I talk to the player real quick? Like you." Instead of like the in-game version of you, she means like the actual person at the computer playing in the game. And so from this point on, you're able to type your responses. And she asks you various questions that don't really matter, except for one where she talks about why I see red. You've probably seen why I only see shades of red. Don't ask too much about it, will you? And if you respond with, "I'm not sure," or any type of negative answer, she'll be like, "Okay, fine, but don't try to ask too much about it. Don't really like talking about it." And then she shows you a memory in her head about her dad. And her dad is just dead. And in the memory that she shows you, it's just a garbled mess of just red. You can't tell what's what. And then she asks you, "What do you see?" And if you give any answer, she'll continue with just, "Oh, it's my dad," or what's left of him after you jumped out a window. There's really no other thing that she speaks on about this. She kind of says, "It's been hard after my dad left." And then when she's starting to get very personal with you, the voice in her head tells her, "You should get home before Mom gets mad." And then while she's walking home, she's just talking about her apartment complex, which is a big circle. And she talks about how uncanny and unreal it looks. And then she gets to her apartment door. And she opens it. And her mom's there. And she asks her, "Did you get the milk?" And she replies with, "Yes." "Did your new medicine help today?" "Yes, Mom." And then the mom tells her to go to bed. That's the end of the first game. The second game is a direct continuation of the first game. Like, right after she opens the door, that's where it starts off. And then she starts off with saying that she sees a lot of shadow creatures around her all the time. And when she's just walking down the hallway, she starts feeling all weird and dizzy. And then this creature that appears in her hallway, sticks its finger into her veins, and says, to say after it, "Don't drink milk, or I will never drink milk again." And she says it after it, and it says, "Say it again." And then she says it again, and then she continues to say it until she says it louder. After that, she goes to her room, starts brushing her teeth, brushing her teeth, washing her face. And after washing her face, she tries to find any excuse not to take her pills at that time. She starts looking at them and she starts saying, "Ugh, I don't want this stuff in me." And then you come in, the voice in her head. And while that voice is in your head, you're like, "Are you sure you don't need your medicine?" And you just make her feel self-doubt. And after she feels self-doubt, she's like, "I guess I couldn't have done this without my medicine. And maybe you're right." Starts getting all melancholy. Things like that. And before she goes to bed, she's like, "I want to gather my thoughts." So she lays down on the floor. And when she lays down on the floor, she imagines her thoughts as fireflies. And she's just sitting there for a bit, trying to gather what happened today. And after she's finished, you can ask her, what did she think while she was on the ground thinking, trying to gather her thoughts. And if you pick that option, it goes into the strangulation cutscene. Fireflies and a piece of paper that has a number for something. And so the first firefly I'll be talking about is the one in her book bag. The one in her book bag, basically you click on it and she talks about her school days. She talks about how good it was and how she was like really smart and how much fun she had in school. And then the player character infers or just assumes that she didn't finish high school. Or school. It wasn't specified high school or not. It was just school. And she was like, "Yeah, but does that matter?" And then she says about her last day of school, her dad just took her out and, took her out, went home, ate dinner with her family. But it can keep on bugging her to tell you it again. And each time it gets worse and worse until she says, "Okay, so while I was biting and scratching my dad and they don't take me out of school, he puts me into a car, takes me home, but before we go home, he gets some milk. And while he gets the milk, he goes home and we eat dinner in our separate rooms while mom's not there. And she gets irritated with you and mad. And after that confrontation, a firefly comes out of her book bag and flies back into her ear." The next firefly I'll be talking about is the one in her sketchbook. So the player asks her why. "Oh, why don't you draw that often?" And she says, "Oh, I don't want to run out of pages and have to buy a new one since the store's pretty far." And the player character asks her, "Why don't you just ask your mom?" And she very much resents the idea. And I guess this just shows that she has some type of resentment towards her mom and doesn't want to ask for anything. And she avoids that. And while she is talking, the wind blows her sketchbook to older pictures. She doesn't like to remember the past, I guess. And she keeps her eyes closed the whole entire time while the sketchbook is turning. And then you finally tell her to open her eyes, and she finally listens to you. After you tell her a few times. And when you tell her after that, a firefly flies out of her sketchbook, and it goes into her ear. And the next firefly I'll be talking about is the firefly from her computer. So, the firefly from her computer has her talk about how she had online friends. And she starts making this analogy about hamsters. While she's making that analogy about hamsters, she gets off track and loses the point of her analogy. So you tell her, stop with the hamster analogies and get to the point. And basically she says, online people aren't real. They're not real people. They're just code and script and EXEs. And once I turn off my computer or close it, they're dead. They're not real. And she talks about this one person that she got kind of close with, but then kind of cuts it off before she can tell you more about it. But when she does that, she says, oh, I'll tell you it later. And then a firefly comes out of her laptop grill, at the fan grills. And then you can go, the next firefly I'll be talking about is the one near her pills. We do that one. She says, oh wow, if I didn't take these pills, I could have died today. And you say, but you took them anyway. There was two options, but I chose the first one. You took them anyway. But she was like, maybe I shouldn't do that. And you say, is this a goodbye? Because essentially you are her pills and her medicine. So if she stops taking them, she won't be able to talk to you. And she says, maybe I'll stop taking them, but I still have to talk to you. So maybe not yet. And then a firefly comes out one of the pill bottles and flies into your ear. And the last firefly is just ones about dosage, numbers, and her pill stuff. And it's not in her handwriting, it's in her mother's handwriting. And the player character says, maybe you should thank your mother for having these things for you so you don't forget them. And she's like, whatever, I don't care about her. I didn't need her help in the first place. And then a firefly comes out and flies into your ear. After that, you have a few choice and options to choose. And one option line just takes you to the balcony where she talks about how weird and unreal her apartment complex is. How it's a big circle and how there's no sun or horizon anymore. It's just apartments facing apartments. And she thinks maybe this isn't real. But that's not true, because in the intro of the second game and in the first game, it was just, in real life, it was pretty clear. Her apartment complex is just a huge circle. And then she remembers about her close friend that she had. That said, oh, they were very good at pretending and not being a robot. That they were good at pretending to be a real human. So she, quote, jumps off the balcony and starts telling you about her experiences with that close friend. They're very close friends. They started talking all the time. And then when she started to get a little bit personal about herself, that other person sent a group of people to harass her. And while they harassed her, she decided to never go on the internet ever again, because it was very bad harassment and it gave her somewhat more trust issues than she already has. And at the end of that whole conversation, she shatters into a million pieces like porcelain mid-sentence. And then she says, it's time to go back inside. And you can just end it there. Essentially, she asks you to tell her a bedtime story, and you say, no, that's dumb, let's focus on something serious, and close your eyes and dream about something. The first ending is essentially just a retelling of the first game, but through the eyes of someone that sees the world normally. She's with this boy, and the boy says, oh, you have to take me to the store to get milk for mother. Or to get milk, because she's his mom. And she just tells him, you're annoying. I don't like you. And they just walk to the store. And while they're in the store, the boy just separates from Milk Girl. And while Milk Girl is looking for the boy runs out screaming from seeing a person. That probably hints to the part where he probably thought about the letter O, and it was very scary. And then while the boy comes to Milk Girl, they're back with each other for a bit, but then he runs off again. And while he runs off, she's just looking for the bagged milk. And she finds the bagged milk and goes to the register. And then when she goes to the register, she sees the boy there. And there's just a huge line of people waiting to buy their groceries. And the cashier says, hey, is this your son? Your son is mentally handicapped in a very not nice way. And she gets mad. It's like, you don't speak to my son like that. I don't even care. I'll buy all this milk and keep the change. We're leaving. And while they're leaving, the boy is trying to console her. And Milk Girl is just very, very distant. She's very distant. And the boy says, you're not really helping me out. I'll try something else. And the boy walks on the incoming traffic on the highway. And then the dream ends. That was a reference to the first game, essentially. And that's probably how people saw her from the normal perspective of life. Instead of her eyes, where everything's just red. And not really colored. So ending 2 just starts with her finding a number. It's a number to a pizza place. And the first response is, hello, would you like to sign up for our rewards program? And she just starts talking about how it's hard for her to exist in this world, essentially. She's like, I don't think anyone else in this world exists. It's just all made up in my mind. And I feel empty sometimes. I feel empty, but it's better than feeling bad or good. Neither bad or good. I'm just here. And this ending I don't really know too much about. I don't know how to summarize it. But essentially, I guess she's using the pizza place as just like a friend. And at the end of the dream, she just gets disconnected from the pizza place. And yeah, it's just, that one was just overall weird and I didn't understand it. The next dream was also pretty short. This one I don't really know too much. It's just, I guess it's something she has with herself where she doesn't like how she looks. So it's a mirror. And basically, each morning, she gets up and looks at her face. And it's the same dialogue that repeats each time. And her face looks tired the first time. It was like normal tired. And the next day, it looks worse. It looks like her eyes are like longer. And her eyes are just out of place. And then having crazy hair. And then having just a hole in her whole face. And then at the end, when her face is completely blank, she's like, oh, I look fantastic. I don't look bad. I'm excited for the next day of school. So from that dream, I think she just has a problem with seeing herself. She doesn't like her face. And her face is just something she just resents, I guess. And then ending 4. This one I know a lot about. Ending 4 is basically she wakes up in a dark dim room hearing noises and roars. And so she curls up into a ball until she hears a voice. And then she sees the door that's seeping light in. And while she hears the person talking, she starts running towards the door. And the person asks them, who are you? And I'm like, I'm blank. I need help. And then as she's running, she starts answering less to their questions. And it's just like panting. And the person's like, get away from me. You're scaring me. Get away. Get away. And then she barely makes it to the door, skidding her face on the floor, but grabbing the knob. And she goes out, and then she feels... She goes into a field. And it's a field with the moon out. And then she's just walking around, laying around. And then she hears something. Hears something making a weird noise. And she looks at it and it's like, hello? And she starts repeating the same questions that the person that, when she was in the dimly lit room, said to her. And then she starts running away and continues to say the same things that were in the dimly lit room, or when she heard when she was in the dimly lit room. And then at some point she trips and falls and ends up back into the dimly lit room. And this proves that it's a loop of just her not wanting to help herself. She wants help, but she can't even help herself. So what's the point of having help for her? Ending 5 is pretty short. It's just basically she ends up in a cold metal staircase. It's a spiral staircase. And she's just hugging the thing in front of her. It's like a giant steak. And she's hugging it in front of her, feeling how cold it is. And she doesn't want to look. But while she's there, she's sitting there. And then thoughts just invade her mind. And the thoughts eventually just make her walk down the staircase. And she can do nothing about it. And the shot pans out to a giant staircase. And then just multiple versions of that same staircase. That one was just... I didn't understand most of the endings. I'm going to be honest. I only understand number 4 and number 1. And number 4 was the forest door thing. And number 1 was the basically retelling of the first game. And now we come to the part to what she has. I think, for one, she has either psychosis or some type of schizophrenia. Because she hears things and sees things that aren't there. Like when she died, when she saw the shadow creatures, having the voice in her head, and just some other things, like how she saw the strangulation cutscene. That's about it. She also has ADHD, for sure. Because it's shown in both games that she has a pretty hard time focusing on one thing. Like in the first game, she had to focus really hard by closing her eyes while walking, or else she couldn't focus on that. And in the second game, she couldn't focus on telling her story about her computer friends. She always go back to the hamster analogy and then just get lost. And she's kind of just always bouncing and looking around herself. And another thing that she has abandonment issues. It's very apparent. Because in the second game, if you don't respond for certain responses, she gets scared. She's like, please don't leave. I really need your help. And she's very dependent on the player character. So she has that. I also think that she has autism. I'm sorry if this comes off offensive in any way, but I think she has autism because of how different she thinks. I'm not saying that she's lesser. I'm just saying that she thinks in a very unique and odd way, only known to her. And she's very used to routine. So if she doesn't do that routine, she just kind of messes up. And I think she's disconnected from reality as a whole. You know, with her only seeing red, and that's called achromatosia, which is, you know, seeing gray, but it's just red with her. And she really can't understand what's real or not. Like with the bear in the first game, she thought a truck was a bear, and she sees these people as like creatures, and she sees her mom as like a weird baby face thing, and she doesn't understand that other people on the internet are real people. She seems like she's always in her own little world. and it's just weird. And that's really just about it. That's all I really have to say. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is my first video. If it's not that good, I apologize, but I'll get better in time, and I'll try to do a better video in the next month or so. So, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, tell me what's wrong, tell me if I can do anything better. I need all the help I can get. Thank you for watching. See you next time.